Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. It happened on a Thursday evening, the kind that smells like burnt coffee and fake calm. She came home from Planet Fitness still in her leggings, hair tied high, skin glowing like she'd just stepped out of someone else's attention. I was fixing the dimmer in the kitchen light, a small repair I'd been putting off. When she passed by, I reached for her waist out of habit, the quiet, automatic gesture of a husband who still believes touch means connection. She stopped my hand midair and said, calm, clinical, almost kind, touch is for special occasions. I remember how the screwdriver slipped in my fingers. I didn't argue, didn't even blink. Just let the words sit between us like static. Later that night, she lit a vanilla candle from Target and scrolled through YouTube on her phone, half listening to a fitness podcast about boundaries in relationships. I sat across from her, watching the soft glow flicker on her face. She looked peaceful, detached, like I was already furniture in the room. It had been months since she started rationing affection. First it was a joke, let's make it special again. Then it became a policy. She measured closeness like calories, handing out warmth only after good behavior. I started noticing how her tone changed around others. Especially that trainer, Josh, the one who always laughed too loudly at her stories. He texted her about form correction, but the smile she gave the screen wasn't professional. That night, when she finally looked at me, it was like she'd just remembered I existed. You're quiet again, she said. I nodded, just thinking. What about? I looked at her, really looked. The calm face, the curated confidence, the glow that wasn't for me anymore. About electricity, I said. How even the smallest current can stop a heart. She laughed softly, not understanding. I went back to adjusting the light switch until the room dimmed just right. A perfect, silent fade. When I finally turned off the last light, I told her quietly, then consider this our last special occasion. She didn't ask what I meant. But by the time she woke up, my side of the bed was empty, the tools gone, and the connection cut. The next morning, she didn't notice I was gone right away. She thought I'd left early for work, like always. She made her coffee, the usual Starbucks blend she loved, and filmed a short video for her YouTube channel about emotional independence. I watched it later from a new phone, one without her number saved. She smiled into the camera with the same expression she used to give me when I came home late. Warm, but rehearsed. It used to melt me. Now it looked like performance art. That day, I shut down every shared account. The streaming subscriptions, the joint checking, the grocery app we used for Kroger. Click, click, click. Each disconnection felt cleaner than any argument ever could. I didn't delete her photos out of anger. I deleted them because I no longer needed reminders of someone who treated affection like currency. By noon, she started calling. By evening, she texted, "Where are you?" Then, "Can we talk?" Her messages stacked up, unanswered. I read them once, like notes from a stranger trying to sound familiar. I'd spent years working with circuits, wires, voltage, learning how energy flows, how it can be redirected, how easily it can be cut off. She thought she was in control of the current between us. But she never understood. I was the one who built it. That night, I drove my Toyota Tundra out of town with no destination, just silence. I didn't feel revenge or sorrow, just a strange sense of balance, like the system had finally reset. The further I drove, the lighter I felt, as if every mile pulled another invisible cord from my chest. She posted a story later, a picture of our living room, captioned "Energy Shift." Growth season. People sent her heart emojis. None of them knew what was missing. I stopped at a small roadside diner, ordered black coffee, and watched the neon lights reflect on the hood of the truck. My phone buzzed again, another message, unread. I powered it off. She used to ration affection like it was precious metal. I just stopped mining. The first real silence hit her on day 2. No good morning texts, no calendar reminders linked to my email, no grocery deliveries from Kroger showing up at the door. She'd built her routine around my presence, quiet but reliable, like background power. When it stopped, the house dimmed in ways she couldn't explain. She called my job, but the manager just said I'd taken a transfer. She tried reaching my friends, but I'd already told them I needed space. No one gave her answers, because I hadn't left a trace worth following. I didn't delete myself out of spite. I just rewired the system so I was no longer part of her circuit. Meanwhile, she kept posting. More videos. More affirmations. When people leave, they're making room for your higher self, she told her followers on YouTube. But even through the camera, I could see her eyes shift, searching the comments for my ghost. I stayed in a motel outside Nashville, working on freelance wiring projects. Small jobs, cash payments, no records. At night, I'd sit in the dark and listen to the low hum of the mini fridge, the only sound in the room. It reminded me that energy never disappears, it just changes direction. On the third night, I bought a new phone at Best Buy. No old contacts, no synced memories. The clerk asked if I wanted to transfer my data, and I said no. I didn't need my past taking up storage. Somewhere between the quiet roads and the motel walls, I realized I hadn't really left her. I'd left the version of myself that kept waiting for permission to be loved. Back home, she must have noticed the final sign. The rent payment came through, but from her own account. I'd already spoken with the landlord. The lease was now under her name alone. The electricity bill, too. For the first time in years, she'd have to keep the lights on by herself. By the fourth day, the silence had turned into noise for her. She texted me one last time, a long paragraph that started with, "I just want to understand," and ended with, "You're being dramatic." I read it once, then archived it. Understanding had always meant one thing in her language, me bending back into shape. This time, the wire stayed cut. She showed up at Planet Fitness like nothing happened. Someone told me later she was quieter than usual, forcing smiles, training harder. Maybe she thought sweat could wash away the emptiness. But there's a difference between exhaustion and peace, and she'd never learned the difference. I'd rented a small apartment in another city by then. Sparse, clean, nothing on the walls. It felt like an unfinished circuit, waiting, but not lacking. I found work fast, rewiring an old office building downtown. Every socket, every switch I replaced felt like symbolic closure. The system worked again, just with new inputs. At night, I'd cook simple meals, sit by the window, and watch the city breathe. My phone stayed off most evenings. When I turned it on, there were new messages from her, shorter each time. Then came a photo, our anniversary dinner, 2 years ago. Her caption said, "Remember this?" I did. The candlelight, the laughter that sounded practiced, the moment she turned away mid-conversation to check her phone, a text from that same trainer, Josh. She'd said it was nothing. I believed her back then. I don't anymore. I didn't reply. Instead, I drafted one sentence and saved it in notes. That was the last special occasion. I never sent it. Some messages are meant only for your own clarity. She used to control affection like a thermostat, turning it up when she needed validation, freezing it when she wanted dominance. Now the temperature was fixed, cold and still. People think disappearing is cruel. It isn't. It's the purest kind of truth. When energy stops flowing, it doesn't announce itself. The light just goes out. The trainer was the first to crack. I didn't plan it that way, but it happened naturally. A client from the same gym reached out to me for some electrical work at her studio. While rewiring the place, I heard her mention that Josh might be in trouble. I stayed silent, hands deep in a fuse box, but listened. Turns out, the gym had started investigating billing irregularities, training sessions charged twice, client refunds never processed. I didn't dig deeper. I didn't have to. Truth has a way of finding oxygen when you stop feeding it. A week later, she posted one of her usual motivational clips on YouTube. Her tone was sharp this time, her voice forced. She talked about people showing their true energy and not everyone being aligned with your growth. Comments poured in. Most supported her. A few asked where Josh went. She didn't answer. I didn't need to. Back in my apartment, I finished installing new light fixtures. Clean, bright, balanced. The hum of the current was steady, predictable. Everything her love had stopped being. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the need to check my phone. That night, she tried again. "I just want closure," she wrote. Then, "You didn't even fight for us." She never understood. The fight wasn't between us. It was between my peace and her control, and I'd already chosen my side. When I drove past the old house a few days later, the blinds were half closed, the porch light flickering. I knew that bulb. I'd installed it myself, a long-lasting LED meant to stay bright for years. Now it was sputtering, uncertain, like it didn't know if it wanted to stay on. The next day, A mutual friend texted me. She's been asking about you at the gym. Says you ghosted her. I didn't reply. Ghosts haunt what they still care about. I was just gone. She used to call my calmness apathy. Now that calm was her punishment. Not given, not taken, just permanent absence. The current was off. The silence, still running strong. The first time she truly felt the shift wasn't when I left. It was when others started noticing. People always told her how balanced she seemed, how centered her energy was. But now, the tone had changed. She walked into Planet Fitness, and her coworkers went quiet mid-sentence. Someone must have mentioned Josh. Maybe someone else mentioned me. Either way, she wasn't the glowing coach anymore. She was the story. I didn't have to say a word. The world was already rearranging itself around her absence of truth. The trainer vanished from social media overnight. She tried posting more motivational clips on YouTube, longer captions, deeper thoughts. But you can't preach balance when you're unraveling. The cracks started showing. A missed upload here. A forced smile there. Even the camera seemed to see it. Meanwhile, I was fine-tuning my new life. Work was steady. My small apartment was simple but alive. I'd even started fixing up an old radio I found at a yard sale. Something about restoring the circuits felt poetic. I was building again, quietly. The sound of current through fresh wire was more comforting than any words she'd ever given me. A friend sent me a message. She asked about you today. Said you're different. I laughed softly. Different was the point. She had built a version of me that depended on her approval. The new version didn't ask for it. That weekend, I stopped by Kroger for the first time since I left. I walked the same aisles we used to share, same fluorescent lights, same canned soup she used to complain about. It didn't hurt anymore. The place hadn't changed, only I had. Somewhere, she must have felt it. The moment when a person realizes they no longer hold your gravity. It's not loud. It's not cinematic. It's just a quiet shift, the kind that turns power into emptiness. She used to ration love to keep me close. Now the shortage was hers. By the 7th week, she had become a stranger even to her own circle. The same people who once quoted her YouTube videos about emotional power now avoided her messages. She'd built her brand on control, teaching others how to manifest attention, protect energy, and never chase. But there's something cruel about losing followers for practicing what you preach. Silence looks like strength until it's reflected back at you. She sent one final text, short, uncertain. I didn't mean for it to get this cold. I read it during lunch, sitting in my truck outside a job site, the air heavy with the smell of metal and dust. I didn't reply. There are messages that don't deserve words, only stillness. My days had found rhythm again. I woke up early, worked with my hands, ended each night in quiet. I'd stopped checking her social media, but mutuals still sent updates. Her videos grew shorter, her tone sharper. The light in her eyes, the one she always knew how to aim, had dimmed. Someone commented, "You seem off lately." She replied with a smile emoji. Energy has weight. You feel it when someone drains it, and you feel it when it finally returns. Mine had come back home. I didn't need revenge, closure, or validation. I just needed space, and I'd built it wire by wire. One night, as I walked back to my apartment, the streetlights flickered above me. For a second, everything went dark. Then, one by one, they came back on, stronger. I smiled. Sometimes systems fail before they stabilize. People too. Somewhere out there, she was learning what true isolation feels like. Not the absence of company, but the absence of control. For the first time, she couldn't ration attention, couldn't manipulate silence. The current was gone, and she didn't know how to generate her own. I didn't disappear to punish her. I disappeared to see who I was without her circuits running through me. Turns out, I was still electric, just finally grounded. Months passed before I saw her again. It wasn't planned. I'd stopped by a hardware store after work, grabbing supplies for a new job, when I heard her voice, that familiar blend of confidence and soft persuasion. She was standing near the checkout, holding a box of light bulbs, talking to a clerk about energy-efficient brightness. The irony almost made me laugh. She turned, and our eyes met. For a second, the air between us froze, not angry, not tender, just charged. She looked different. Thinner, maybe. Paler. There was a kind of exhaustion beneath her foundation, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. She smiled, hesitant. "You look good," she said. Her voice tried for casual, but it cracked halfway through. I nodded once. No words felt necessary. She filled the silence. I've been doing a lot of reflecting. Therapy. Growth. I realized I built walls instead of bridges. I didn't respond. The man behind me coughed, impatient. The cashier rang up my items. I never wanted distance, she continued, eyes glassy now. I just thought withholding made love stronger. I thought it made me in control. I placed my things on the counter, paid in cash, and finally said, control doesn't make love stronger. It makes it smaller. She didn't speak again. I took the receipt, nodded politely, and walked out. No scene, no anger, no closure speech. Just quiet. Outside, I sat in my truck for a moment, letting the engine hum. The sound was low, steady, like a heartbeat that had learned its own rhythm again. Through the window, I saw her standing there, frozen in that aisle of light bulbs, surrounded by brightness but still in the dark. As I drove away, I realized something simple. I wasn't running from her anymore. I'd already finished that part of the story. Now, I was just driving toward peace and leaving her to face the blackout she'd built herself. After that brief encounter, I didn't see her again for a long time, but traces of her kept surfacing. Someone from the old neighborhood mentioned that her business had slowed down. A few clients left, others stopped renewing their sessions. The trainer never came back. No one knew where he'd gone. She still posted sometimes, shorter clips now, filmed under colder light. The captions talked about resilience, but her voice had lost its rhythm. She was trying to sound whole in a house that no longer echoed. It wasn't revenge. It was reality adjusting. Every system eventually balances itself, even emotional ones. She had lived by control, by rationing affection, praise, and warmth, and now she was running on reserves she couldn't refill. I spent most days on construction sites, restoring old buildings, watching sparks leap between wires. That flicker of life, raw, temporary, always reminded me of how close we once were before she turned our love into calculation. I'd learned something from those circuits. When energy meets resistance too long, it burns out. One night, I came home to find a letter wedged under my door. No envelope, just folded paper with her handwriting. It said, I finally understand what you meant. You didn't leave to hurt me. You left to stop being drained. I thought love was control. You showed me its current, and I was the brake. I didn't reply. There was nothing to fix, no current to restore. But I read it twice, quietly, and then set it aside. It wasn't apology or redemption, just recognition, late but honest. Outside, the city lights hummed like an endless grid, power pulsing through 1,000 stories that would never cross mine again. I sat by the window, watching them fade one by one into distance. For years, she measured our closeness by how much I reached for her. Now, the only measure left was absence, and that silence spoke louder than anything she ever rationed. A year passed before I drove back through that town again. It wasn't nostalgia that brought me there, just a job 2 exits over and a full tank of gas. The streets looked the same, but everything carried a strange quiet, as if time had decided to move on without asking for permission. I stopped at a small diner near the highway, the kind we used to visit after her late gym sessions. The waitress poured my coffee, and for the first time in a long while, the silence felt peaceful, not heavy. Through the window, I saw her walking down the opposite sidewalk. She wasn't dressed for show anymore, just jeans, a gray hoodie, hair tied back. There was no camera in her hand, no audience. Just her. For a moment, she stopped, saw me through the glass, and froze. Then, slowly, she nodded, not in greeting, but in acknowledgement. The kind that says, I know what I lost. I didn't move, didn't wave, just looked back once, calm, steady. There was no anger left, no triumph. Only distance and balance. She crossed the street and stood outside for a few seconds, like she wanted to come in but couldn't find the right version of herself to do it. Then she smiled faintly, the kind of smile that knows it's too late, and turned away. As she walked off, the diner's neon sign flickered above her. One letter burned out, the light stuttering. It felt symbolic, but I didn't dwell on it. I finished my coffee, paid in cash, and stepped out into the cool air. Driving away, I thought about how love, like electricity, isn't something you own. You just keep it flowing until someone starts charging for the current. That's when you pull the plug. By the time I hit the open road, the sun was low, painting the asphalt gold. I didn't look back again. She once said, "Touch is for special occasions." I finally understood what that meant. So I whispered to no one, "Then consider this the last one." And I kept driving, headlights cutting through the dusk, steady, silent, and free. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.